Hello, KFC SuperCoaches, and welcome to a Christmas edition of KFC SuperCoach Live TV. We are almost at the end of round 2 of the SuperCoach BBL season. The Strikers are hosting the Thunder over here in Adelaide tonight, and then we're not long into round 3. So plenty to talk about. We're going to talk about trades. We're going to take your questions. But first off, now you guys are over in Melbourne. It's good to have you on board. Our pattern, of course, a Christmas hour. Great to be in the spirit. But the big present for KFC SuperCoaches out there is the return of the great man, Tim Mitchell. Tim, welcome.
Phantom, I said I wasn't coming back on a video until Al Patton got me my top 1,000 socks from SuperCoach AFL. And finally, they've delivered. I've commandeered myself 3 pairs because I had to wait that long. I thought I was owed a bit of a premium. But I've got my socks now. I'm happy. I'm back on the video and, looking forward to chatting some KFC SuperCoach BBL over the next sort of 20 minutes or so and hopefully giving out some good trade advice. Hello to you, Shannon, as well. Thanks for jumping on and watching.
Well, you know who wouldn't be up for one of those pairs of socks is Dan Batten, your colleague over there. Is it true that you waited till he was unable to come on until you made your return?
Oh, mate, if I have to hit up like talk about how many the fact that he captained Jai Richardson in round 2 one more time, it's just doing my head in. So he stitched us today. I think he said to go Christmas shopping at Chadstone, which I couldn't think of a worse experience at this time of the year to put yourself through. But anyway, we'll have to do without him. And the funny thing is, Phantom, I looked at his team and I think he had Jai score about 550 points, whatever he scored this round. And I'm still going to beat him. So that goes to show where the depth is at with Batten's team. And hopefully we can, because I think I still got to get bragging rights off him back from last year. So fingers crossed that trend continues. Not that my team's going all that well, to be honest. Anyway, how are you guys looking? Al, how's your team started in BBL 12?
G'day guys, thanks for having me on. Yes, Merry Christmas. I thought the KFC green and the red, and we'll get into the Christmas spirit. But winding back, the BBL just moved so quickly. But what is it, about a week ago? That first night was, pretty incredible. I just had an absolutely atrocious start. We had a lot of, people were in the same boat. Obviously, Marcus Stoinis was most popular pick in the game. Then we had news that he had COVID. Then he was playing. Then he lasted one delivery, and then he sort of sat in the outfield. I think Tim, in our chat, you posted the meme of Homer Simpson with that about week-old sandwich, and that's sort of what Marcus looked like on the boundary line there, wrapped in a blanket for most of the innings. But then he did play the next game and didn't score much better than that. But I actually recovered in the end and scored 1,152 in round 1 and is ranked just outside the top 2K. So I was really happy with that. It just goes to show the roller coaster that is KFC SuperCoach BBL. You can bounce back pretty quickly, especially in those double game rounds, even though some players such as Stoy. I mean, the chances of Marcus Stoinis scoring 0 in a double is just, you would never have seen that coming in a million years. So,
what about the chances of him losing money, Al? We all thought he was an absolute bargain at 83K, and he lost 13K in the first round. So it's been crazy, hasn't it? And Phantom, I don't know if you're in the same boat, but like Matthew Gilks, just shake our head at what's happened over the first couple of rounds there. Like a lot of us thought he'd be a great sort of cheapie to stash and play 4 times in the first 2 rounds. Hasn't worked out. Alex Hales has barely made a run. But there's been some positive stories as well. Like Jai Richardson was absolutely awesome. I know you had Aaron Hardy, Phantom, in your team the other night. I think, Al, you might have as well. He really sort of lived up to expectation in round 2 for those that stashed him as well. So there has been some wins so far, but there's definitely been some tough moments as well for KFC SuperCoach. And I think, like many, we've sort of been on the end of a few of those.
And I'm sure we'll. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say we'll get to some rookie chat maybe a bit later on in terms of who we might want to trade in and out. So in SuperCoach AFL this time of year, it's about all make sure you got the rookies that you missed. It's a little bit different in the BBL, but there will be some. And a couple of guys that I'm pretty happy with picking. Tom Rogers at the Stars was 62K to start the year, and he's had a reasonable start. And also Tim, I've got to give you credit for tipping me off on Naveed. You can try and pronounce his first name at the Sixers.
Harold Huck, I think it is.
Yeah, and he's scored a couple of 60s, coming off a 62K starting base as well. So a couple of guys off the bench who are hopefully going to make me a little bit of money.
Yep, of course. Now, the last game of round 2 is tonight, so grab your bucket and put your feet up because KFC is delivering this cricket season Get in on the action from home and order off the KFC app or website to snag a fried gold feast. No doubt you both will be doing that for the Thunder and Strikers tonight. I'm just outside the top 2,000, I think a little bit behind I was looking okay as well with Jai Richardson, Aaron Hardy in my side over the last couple of nights for some points, but I had a bit of a disaster, an early disaster. I am prone to that. I know. I'm sure I'll get it in the comments, but I got Josh Inglis stuck on my bench just before lockout. Had Matthew Way, which worked out okay, but had Aaron Hardy as emergency, and he's the spinner, Peter. Has to go the Scorchers over there. He ended up playing, as you saw last night, coming in, played 1 over, and of course,
he played?
Well, yeah, he bowled 1 over, ruined my loop, have to take his 0 on field. So that's hurt my what was looking at a pretty decent round 2 score. But Tim, what do we think? There's a few questions coming in. We'll get to those in a minute. You can look at our round 3 trade guide, which you put together, heraldsun.com.au, dailytelegraph.com, doing all the News Corp mastheads. It's free to read for everyone out. Let's get on there and look at Tim's analysis. But what are we going to do in round 3? What are your early plans?
Good question, Phantom. So the good timing, sort of jumping on just after 5 p.m. because the Brisbane Heat squad for tomorrow night dropped about 30 minutes ago or so. And as we expected, Michael Nisa and Matt Redshaw are back, which are two pretty big ins for the Heat and sort of potentially two pretty big ins for KFC SuperCoach as well. And I think the interesting bit out of the sort of Heat squad and what the final 11 looks like now is going to be there's a lot of us out there hoping that if we either started Josh Brown or we're thinking of trading him in because we need the capital to get James Basley, to get Mark Steckity, and to get these Heat players who are going to cost us 160,000 or more. We want Josh Brown in the team so we can use him as sort of a downgrade option as well and sort of play him during his double. But does he keep his spot with Matt Renshaw back in the team? Do they go with him or Max Bryant? I think Brown made 7 and Max Bryant was out cheaply against the Renegades back in round 1. So that's going to be really interesting. And then obviously the makeup of their bowling as well. Like Xavier Bartlett got absolutely taken apart by Nick Maddinson up in Cairns. So do they leave him out for Michael Nisa? Or do they go with sort of down the pace path, which is traditionally what the Heat have done, and potentially leave out one of their round 1 heroes in Matt Kuhneman, who took 3 wickets in Cairns? And that'd be pretty stiff, not just for Matt, but for a lot of KFC super coaches who sort of chose to stash him as a potentially sort of nice moneymaker at the start of the season. He was only 71k, he scored 93 in the first round, and I'll be absolutely spewing if Matt Kuhneman gets dropped because I picked him up this week using a boost as sort of an extra option to give myself an extra Heat play next round as well. So I'm hoping that they stick with the form lines, Brisbane Heat, and keep Matt Kuhneman in their team. But as far as sort of leading Heat options go, James Basley's the one that I really like. I think you've just got to have him in your team. He's bowling at the death now, batting as well, and I think he's sort of got the potential for a captaincy pick as well next round. Who do you like from the Heat, Al?
Well, just quickly to clarify, so as you say, that round 2 finishes tonight. Round 3 starts tomorrow night. That's BB. Obviously, things roll around pretty quick. And as you've obviously alluded to, the Heat have the double, so that's where we're looking for. And Thunder have the bye. Is that right?
Yes, that's Sydney Thunder bye. So they played 4 of the first 2 rounds, and then they're off next round. So it's going to be hard because like we're offloading. I don't know, like Jilks, no value. Alex Hales has lost about 30k already, so we're going to be trying to find a way to get rid of him. I think it's going to be a case, Phantom, isn't it? Like we potentially have to offload Faruqi, who's been great, and also potentially Daniel Sams, who a lot of people would have wanted to be a season keeper as well, if we're going to want to get all these Brisbane Heat targets into our team.
Yeah, and I think that is the key to KFC SuperCoach BBL. We have to sort of be willing to let go of these guys a little bit more so than you would in other formats, the AFL and the NRL super coaches. You're tied to your players a little bit more. But given we can trade every week with the addition of the boost as well this summer, you just got to get the guys who are playing that round. Now, I know you can build, there is strategy to building an overall team, but you just got to make sure you have the guys for the round at hand. If that means putting off a Daniel Sams and not getting him back for 3 or 4 weeks, then so be it. I think you just can't keep him because he's a good player. You've got to be willing to let the big guns go in order to score points for that round. But just quickly, it is raining here in Adelaide, as a few commenters have suggested. About 2 hours. Oh, it's actually bucketing down here on the roof here at the advertiser, but 2 hours until the first ball, and it looks like it is going to pass. It's at this point, so it's going to be wet out there. But at this point, I wouldn't have thought it's going to hang around for too much long. So fingers crossed there is some action.
Us Daniel Sam's captainers would love hearing that. So we desperately need a big one from him to potentially match all those Jai Richardson vice captainers and captainers from this round as well. But so the other path that we can go down for round 3, like Brisbane Heat is the obvious path to go with them having the double. But I've noticed a few people looking at cash cows as well, being early in the season and wanting to build their team value up, which is, we know, is so important in KFC SuperCoach BBL as well. And the guy that we've added a few lines to the trade guide about today and who scored 132 points last night is Paddy Dooley from the Hobart Hurricanes. I'm expecting his price to go up to about 103K next round. So that's a jump of about 31 or 32K from his current price. But the projections have his break even being sort of even lower than a -50, maybe even somewhere towards -70 next round. So over the next 2 weeks with that score in his price cycle, he's going to make a lot of cash. What do you guys think about maybe holding off on getting one Brisbane Heat player and playing sort of the long-term game and getting someone like Paddy Dooley into your team to really make some cash and, I don't know, make sure you've got the money in the bank for guys like Sean Abbott, who's got his double in round 5?
I think it's, yes, I mentioned about being willing to trade out anyone, and just for that week, Dooley showed how good he can be with the ball and how dangerous he can be and what he can score in KFC SuperCoach. So I think given his role, given what he bowls in the format, like, it's not just a cash play, I don't think, and he can score well. And as I mentioned at the top, again, on the double game round stuff, yes, we want to target the best guys for that week, but we're not always about that. Marcus Stoinis 0 in a double game, and we spoke about it in the pre-season as well, that the big guns can score well enough in a single game to outdo some of the double game guys. So although I like the idea of really trading for that week, and if that means sacrificing a big gun, so be it, but not just at the expense of anyone. But Julie, I think, is one, I think I'll be targeting.
Yeah, I mean, you Stoinis is the obvious one, but you've already mentioned Tim Hales and Jilks, these guys. That you take one Paddy Dooley game over those two guys in a double so far. Especially, there just seems to be such a huge gap between the batters and the bowlers. Like, if you're guaranteed 4 overs, that's you bank that even over 2 shots at the crease. The way things are going.
But last year was, I don't know, a bit of an anomaly in KFC SuperCoach BBL, that like Ben McDermott averaged more than 70 playing predominantly as a batsman, picked up the odd wicket keeping points. Alex Hales averaged pretty well, and I think in the back half of maybe BBL 10 he did as well. But there was a lot of batsmen in sort of the top point scorers last season, and the first 2 rounds of this season, I don't know, there's been a lot of funny things happen. Like, you wouldn't expect, say, in the first game of BBL 12 that Bo Webster would get named at number 7, potentially as a 6th bowler, then come out and get 2 wickets bowling the 20th death over while Marcus Stoinis was crook. So that's happened. And then, like, even Aaron Hardy, we said how good he was, but his role necessarily wasn't something that you target normally in KFC SuperCoach. A lot of people were in a fortunate position where they stashed him, and he bowled really well last night, but didn't bowl in the first game, was only playing as a number 6 batsman and ended up scoring, I think, 165 points for this round too. So there's been a few players that have really jumped out of the box in the first few rounds as well. It'll just be interesting to see now whether, I don't know, the scoring reverts a bit more to what we're used to in the sort of 5-6 years that we've had KFC SuperCoach BBL, or whether some of these different trends continue to pop up each round. And there's, it really has, as you say, trended towards the bowlers so far. They're the ones that have been doing most of the damage, as we saw with Paddy Dooley last night and Jai Richardson in round 2 as well.
What about Henry Thornton?
Yeah.
Henry Thornton, with 260 points in round 1. I think he was in about 2% of teams as well. So what a great pot if he managed to get on in that. Absolutely. We talk about funny things happening. Sydney Thunder getting on 15 in a double game week was just about as disastrous as it could happen. So I was dumb enough to go. I went to bed thinking, this game's going to go far too late. I think it might be the second game of a double header, and it must have been over 30 minutes after I fell asleep. So, been an interesting start on many fronts to BBL 12, but hopefully people's KFC SuperCoach BBL teams have started pretty well.
Tim, just quickly, you speak about the awkward roles. Tim David, we know his talent, but someone we sort of overlooked a little bit, given where he's batting in the Hurricanes order. But he showed last night how quickly he can pile on the run and the KFC SuperCoach point. Zebra, from the KFC SuperCoach YouTube channel, is Tim David worth it? Speaking of cash gen.
So 49 and 91 points so far for Tim David, which is pretty promising for a guy that's batting sort of number 5, number 6 in that Hobart Hurricanes order. But it probably speaks, doesn't it, to the fact that the Hurricanes have lost early wickets in both of their games so far. So Tim David has had a fair chance to bat. But I was so impressed by what he did last night, watching back some of the highlights this morning, of just how composed he was playing with Paddy Dooley late in that innings. Like, he had to take all the pressure on his shoulders to get Hobart Hurricanes to what ended up being a match-winning total, and probably put on 25 or 30 of that partnership with Dooley sort of hanging around there at the end. So we know that Tim David, if he gets to 20, is going to get the strike rate bonus just because of the way that he plays. And yeah, he just looks sort of that class above now, doesn't he? It really just doesn't matter. Like, you're probably going to have that odd game where you pick him, that Darcy Short gets away, Matthew Wade plays a big innings and is there for 15 overs and maybe only gets a few balls towards the end. But the thing that I like about Tim David is, and the Hobart Hurricanes order, like their order from sort of number 4, where Shadab Khan's been batting, to about number 6 or 7 is very fluid. Like, you think depending on game situation, they could throw Tim David in at any point, and they'd love having him out there in the surge, which makes a lot of sense because he can sort of blast 20 or 30 in those 2 overs. So he's got a great role in terms of sort of how they want to use him, but you just need to be mindful of the fact as well that there is going to be that odd game down the stretch where he probably doesn't face too many balls. So I wouldn't let that frustrate you too much. But if you're going to get Tim David, it needs to be in the next couple of rounds, because his price is about to sort of go into that sort of 120k plus range where you probably wouldn't want to be getting on a number 6 batsman at when his price gets to that point.
Yep, quickly shout out to Alex from the beach. He's got us there live. Thanks for tuning in. Craig is finished 25th last year in KFC SuperCoach BBL. Says he's doing it really tough. Hasn't been going bowlers, and we've been talking about it. And then he follows up with double bowlers are definitely the go. So we've spoken about that.
What? Phantom Al. Why do people who finish 25th overall ask questions of us? Like, that just it boggles the mind why people that finish that high are asking questions. Like, we had Chris Baker on, who won KFC SuperCoach BBL a couple of years ago, and he was asking us what to do. And it should be the other way around, shouldn't it?
Well,
yeah. Well, definitely in my case with BBL, happy to take advice on.
Maybe when Batten's not on. Yeah, if Batten's on, maybe that stands Tim. But
so, I mean, you mentioned a name off the top, Tim, Michael Nessa. He has to be number 1, doesn't he? Target next week. He's only 107k. We're talking about double round bowlers at the Heat. I mean, Steckety's 175k. What's their attack look like there? Do you reckon? Who's going to get the overs at the Heat?
Well, I'm hopeful that Kuhnemann keeps his spot. He bowled so well in that first game. I think he'd be pretty stiff to get squeezed out. I'm sort of suspecting, well, it's going to be one of him and Xavier Bartlett, you think, that gets left out. Steckety's so important to that Heat attack, bowls of death overs. Mitch Swepson's sort of the second T20 spinner really in Australia, or Zampa and Agar are the 2 that they regularly use, but then Swepson's the go-to guy if one of them's unavailable and they need the extra spin overs for Australia, so he's not going anywhere. And then I think Bazley will keep his spot as the all-rounder. I know a few people suggesting that maybe Nisa would come in and bat number 7 for Bazley, but I think that's underestimating sort of how important Bazley's been to that team and just how much he's improved in the last 12 or so months. So I really like James Bazley as sort of the best captaincy option of next round. If not, you'd be wanting to go with one of the bowlers based on what we've seen so far, sort of in Nisa or Steckety. But you make a really good point, Al, like 70k difference between Nisa and Steckety. And our Sydney Thunder players have lost a lot of value. Like, if you're on Jason Sanger, you're very unlucky with him going down with a broken collarbone the other night. His round score this round is going to be 12 points, and he's going to lose a lot of cash based on that. I think we'll have the sort of official figure in our SuperCoach Plus article this week, but that means that you're going to have to look for cut price options, and you might have to miss out on Mark Steckety and pick Michael Nisa instead, with the only sort of potential red flag with Nisa being that it would be pretty unfortunate if he played in Geelong tomorrow night and then sort of got added to the Boxing Day test squad because he was already in Victoria and they wanted that extra number in there. So I don't know if that'll happen with Josh Hazelwood sounding like he's back in the frame for the test squad and pushing Scott Boland for a place at the MCG, but just something to keep in the back of your mind as well, that we know Michael Neese is on the fringes of the test squad, and if they go with a maybe 14-player squad for the MCG, Michael Neese might be asked to stay in Melbourne rather than be part of the Heat's second game of the round 3 double.
That's a bit of a scary thought there, Al. I was going to lock in Michael Neese too. First class, 136 he made a few months ago as well. So we know he can whack it with the bat too at the bottom, the middle to late order. But let's hope he does play in both of the Heats games. I think I'll be tempting him anyway. Josh asked, we're talking about bowlers, but he says, who are the standout batsmen for the Heat? We've spoken about the cheapie Josh Brown. Tim, I saw in the trade guide that he did put up, again, you can read that on the News Corp masthead websites. Colin Munro, not a lot of love for him. He's at the Heat this summer. We know at his best can go large. So considering him, and not cheap, obviously, given what he's done in the past, and we know it can all go pear-shaped for batsmen. But what do you think about him?
It's just about how we can fund it. So especially if you're looking at getting someone like Mark Steckety, going to be pretty hard to fit him and Colin Munro into your budget, assuming that you're trading Sydney Thunder players after this round, as so many of us KFC SuperCoach BBL players will be. So I can understand Colin Munro. He's probably, on their day, all of those Brisbane Heat players we know can blast off. Like Josh Brown's got an incredible record in Queensland Premier Cricket, which is why he got the opportunity. Max Bryant, we've seen flashes of his brilliance, but he's never completely put it together in the BBL. Sam Billings was out cheaply in that game up in Cairns, but he can be so destructive, and he was brilliant for the Sydney Thunder last season. And then you've got Matty Renshaw coming in, presumably to potentially bat number 3 or number 4, and he's been in really solid form in the Shield and also in a couple of tour games already this summer. So he's one I'd be pretty keen on, Matt Renshaw, based on the fact that he could potentially pick up a couple of overs as well. But the flip side of that might be, I already talked about sort of the fear I've got that Matt Kuderman, who's sitting there as my Luke player at the moment this round, might get squeezed out of the team. And maybe that's what comes down to sort of Matt Renshaw being there as the second spin option that they didn't have in the first round. The guy, and probably the pod, though, phantom for the Brisbane Heat is Ross Whiteley. And I think depending on the way that they go with their attack, might lean me towards maybe picking Whiteley as a bit of a pod. So he only bowled 1 over up in Cairns, but I thought he looked pretty decent. Bowls sort of left arm mediums, and also batting at number 6. And we saw in that first game that he can whack a ball too. So he's only just over 100k. And if he's potentially going to be bowling a little bit more, say if they go with the 2 spinners, he might be a guy that comes into my thinking for round 3 as well.
Benny's got a question here. Thoughts on Jimmy Pearson, 58 KFC SuperCoach BBL points for him in the opening round. Pretty cheap, I think. What is he?
81k.
81k. Any love for him?
I got him. Yeah, I got him. I was going to get Peter Hanscom, and then I saw Pearson named at number 5 in that first game, and thought, what's the point of getting Hanscom, who's not even in the Renegades team? I might as well just have a throw at the stumps with Jimmy Pearson, and he batted quite well in that game. So as long as he keeps his spot at number 5, I would probably be leaning towards him over Sam Billings because of the dollars that you save. So you're saving maybe 50k or a little bit more. Sam Billings batting at number 4, Jimmy Pearson batting at number 5. So there's only got to be a loss of 1 more wicket for Pearson to get a hit. And Pearson's also wicket keeping too, so he's always got the chance of a stumping or a catch behind the stumps too. So if you were tossing up Sam Billings or Jimmy Pearson, and I think a lot of people will go down this route just because the Sydney Thunder players have lost so much value, I think Pearson's probably the one out of those 2 that you're going to have to settle for in round 3.
Yep, I agree. So you can spend the extra money on the bowlers, as we've discussed, and then go a little bit cheaper there. With the batsmen out, Ted's got a question about Ben McDermott. Advice, trade or hold? His price is going to fall a little bit, I think.
Yeah, well, I think Tim mentioned the SuperCoach Plus article coming up in the next couple of days, and I think he has done a bit more digging into exactly how much money he is going to lose, but it's going to be a heap because he was over 200. Well, he's still over 200k, and his break even was well over 100, and he hasn't obviously scored anywhere near that in the first couple of games. So he's definitely coming down. I mean, as sort of referring always back to KFC SuperCoach AFL, you're looking for these fallen primos, and he'll be one of those in the next couple of weeks. I mean, you're always referring to the fixture in KFC SuperCoach BBL and just looking up. I mean, it's a couple of rounds away, but Hurricanes have the bye in round 5. So maybe after that might be when you'd be looking to pick him up coming into. I think they've got a double like round 8 or something. So for those of us who don't have him, if you do have him, I mean, you got to
jump off him.
Punt him.
Yeah, I don't know. It's always that tough question of like, because he's all lost so much money. Like a lot of people had to keep Marcus Stoinis, even though he's going so badly, but just because, you can't really get much for him. I suppose he's still going to be enough that, you could trade him to one of those heat, bowlers or
that's what I'd be doing.
It's something decent.
I'd go straight to James Bazley. I think they'll be around at the same price. Bazley might cost you 10k more, but that's the move I'd be making. I'd jump off now, and then you could potentially get Ben McDermott 60k cheaper come round 6. And that's the luxury that the 3 trades a week, or potentially 4 with the trade boost, give you in KFC SuperCoach BBL. You could play the stock market a bit more and jump off a guy that's on the way down and try and get one that's on the double or on the way up instead.
Quick question for you. Well, both of you guys. How many boosts down are we? And you planning to use another one this week?
Well, there's only been one round, Dal, so I'm one boost there. I did use one. As I said, I burned it to get that extra heat player into my team, so I was trying to sort of structure up for the next few weeks. I started Jimmy Pearson, so I was happy with that. I thought I'll use him as my wicket keeper in round 3. But then I was so impressed with Matt Kuhneman, and I think I had 82k left after my 3 trades, and he just fitted nicely into my trade structure. So I thought I'll grab him as well. There's a little bit of risk associated with it because he's probably in that same boat as Peter Hetzoglu, who most people expected was probably going to be in first team and then didn't get named for the first game of the round 2 double. So hopefully we don't end up with that same sort of frustration that a lot of people got stuck with. But I boosted there, and I think it might be a slightly risky strategy, but I'm thinking I boost again in round 2, get either 3 Brisbane Heat players and a player that I know that's really on the up and I need to grab now, maybe like Akil Hussain from the Renegades, whose price is just going north at a rate that I can't keep up with after the way that he's performed in the first couple of rounds. So potentially do that. Or if Josh Brown's named, I might use him as sort of that 4th trade to try and make sure I get Steckity, Bazley, and maybe Michael Neser in and really load up on Heat players and try and go hard again for round 3. But all going to plan, I reckon I'll be out of boost by round 5 because I'm already looking at that Renegades and 6's double in round 5 is a really important one where I'll need to have guys like Hussain and Sean Abbott and maybe Naveen Al-Haq, the new Afghan quick that has signed with Sydney Sixers in the last week or so too. So I think you can go hard pretty early on. And the season sort of settles itself out a bit after that. I think round 6, round 7, there's no doubles, and it gives you an opportunity to get a few Hobart players. And I think strikers might have a round 9 double actually, but I think it's Hobart and 6s in round 8. So it gives you a chance to slowly use the 3 trades a week to bring a few Hobart and 6s players into your team round 6 and round 7 to make sure you're ready for round 8.
Yep, that is an important one. Round 5 in KFC SuperCoach BBL with the big double. And of course, I think I'll be the same. I used the boost the first week, and I'll probably be out of boost by about the same time. Tim is as well. But it's always important to plan ahead in KFC SuperCoach BBL with those big double game rounds coming up. You can check out all the targets over the next couple of weeks. We'll have everything you need to know in our trade guides across the News Corp mastheads, and we'll try to fit another video in at some point too. Busy time over Christmas, but Tim, thanks for joining us here on KFC SuperCoach Live TV. Tim, it's good to have you back. Now, good luck catching Dan Batten tonight.
Fair, Tim. I wonder what Dan's bought us for Christmas. He's shopping. Hopefully he's got us something nice.
Hopefully this is his present to us, not being here tonight. So we'll take that, I think, from Dan Batten. We might have a few KFC SuperCoach AFL listeners out. Team Picker is out. You've been a busy man the last week.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a couple of articles up. I think Tim's done one as well, which we'll put out soon. And your good self has been digging through the rookies, which we all obviously need to know about. So keep an eye out for those. But yeah, there's a couple of articles up, and you can get into the Team Picker earlier if you're a SuperCoach Plus subscriber and see everyone's price for AFL next year and start seeing what a team might look like. And I've seen a lot of different configurations. So yeah, it's going to be good fun.
More importantly, I think you two might be about to jump into a second live video for the day, talking a bit of SuperCoach AFL and the prices as well. So head over to our SuperCoach AFL Facebook page or catch us on YouTube as well, because these two are going to continue talking SuperCoach for the next half hour or so and really dissecting some of those prices and everything for 2023 as well. So, no, fair, it's been great to be back on. Hopefully my team can improve a bit on what it's done in the first couple of rounds. And KFC SuperCoaches, thanks for tuning in as well. It's been fun, and have a nice Christmas.
Indeed. Thanks for joining us here on KFC SuperCoach Live TV. As Tim said, have a safe and Merry Christmas and good luck with your BBL teams over the next couple of weeks.